What if the story you've been living your whole life wasn't actually the truth?
What if it was just a set of old beliefs created years ago that are still running the show today?
I'm Victoria.
And I'm Milt.
And this is Rewrite Your Story, the podcast where we explore how the narratives in your head shape your life
and how you can begin rewriting them with clarity, compassion, and tools you can actually use.
Let's dive in.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We are on episode 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Woo!
number
That's
6.
so
We're
exciting.
cruising along. Consistency, which I think if people understood how big that was for us, um, such a
Consistency
big
is
deal.
hard at Roots
Yeah,
Counseling and Wellness sometimes.
we're learning why that is hard. More
Yes.
specifically, mostly for me.
Well,
All
and
right.
I think it's hard just because, like, this is mentioned all the time. You just have so many things that you want to do.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like, there's so many things that we want to do that we get into, like, well, what is it called? The paralysis.
Analysis paralysis.
Yes. And then it can turn into that, or it's just like jumping from thing to thing. So I think it's pretty common, but this is exciting. We're staying consistent with this, and we love that.
I agree. Sorry, I was yawning and trying not to open my mouth. So if you see me smiling for a prolonged period of time, really what it is a yawn.
It's a yawn.
All right, Victoria, you have the show and tell today.
I do. Okay, so I have two options. Do we want the actual fidget or do we want the crystal? Well, no, I have this one in my hand. So I'll just do this one first. So this is a fun little like snaky thing. So yeah, if you would like to see what this looks like, we are posting the video of our recordings on YouTube now. So subscribe, like, share, join us on YouTube, all the things that podcasters say. Um,
Tell us
so
how
my
much we
fidget,
get things wrong.
yeah, please. We love feedback. We are super big fans of feedback.
We are. We like feedback, actually. I didn't
No,
mean
we
I always
genuinely
accept
do.
it.
Yeah,
That's a different discussion. Accepting is not always agreeing with.
exactly. So yeah, my fidget of the week is this little snaky thing. I used to work at an elementary school as a BHA, which is just a fancy way of saying I worked with the social worker and I worked with the more
School
behavioral,
counselor and stuff.
yeah, the school counselor, school social worker, and I worked with like the behavior kids. And so um we got fidgets all the time. I was actually in charge of like putting together an Amazon list for fidgets to buy and like toys to buy for anyways. So I took this from the school. Shout out to Tyler for letting me take this. Actually, I don't know if he knows. And shout out to the elementary school for doing this. But it
So if
breaks
they weren't
apart.
aware that they were stolen from, now they are.
Now they are.
I don't know if the statute of limitations has passed.
You
You might be in
know,
trouble.
they can't. It's fine. I can give it back if they really want it. We had so many of these. Um So yeah, it's just this fun snaky thing. It breaks apart. You can put it back together. Gives like nice little click. My favorite form of it though is twisting it on my finger. And then if you get it just right, which I'm not going to now because I'm like all shaky, but it just like sits on your finger well, and then I can go like this. So it's like a
Uh,
slinky almost.
but then you get the ridges and the tactile and all that other stuff.
Yeah. Super fun. I can
Love
get
it.
aggressive and it breaks apart. So my fidget this week.
Nice.
Yeah.
So just to kind of update everyone, so we have our skills manual all done, but it's very much in technical speak. So we're in the process of translating it to human. So with that in mind, that means we're going to be doing a little bit more structured presentations now because we're trying to present the model in what they call to fidelity. We're going to try to stick to what the model is teaching, which means we're going to adjust anything that we creeped out or in that was not part of the model. And then we're going to wrap up Learn today. It looks like that's our agenda.
Yeah, super exciting. So yeah, we've been for the last 5 episodes, we've been talking about this learn idea and just what it kind of means and like what this pillar is all about. And so the biggest thing is being present, right? I feel like that's the biggest thing that we've hit on. throughout this process and recognizing when, the things that we believe to be true or that we want to be true, or like looking at reality, like this is the reality that we want versus the reality that we're actually in, recognizing when that happens and when those thoughts or emotions or behaviors are kind of coming through. And then taking that step back and just letting that be what it is and shifting into that more, again, observation piece rather than trying to do something about it. So if we're looking at DBT words, it's like that being versus doing mind kind of idea. And we talked about that too, of like, it's hard when we have cultural and societal norms that feed into you have to always be doing, you have to always be doing. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes you need to just be. And so that's kind of
Well, and
what
even
we were
just
talking.
saying it that way, like the idea of we don't even need to say it. Sometimes you just need to be. We need to understand the value of being along with the value of doing. And are we wisely applying the value of being in the moment and the value of doing? And how not valuing those states gets in the way of seeing reality as it is.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think even we can go into a being state where it's just complete dissociation, right? Or complete numbness. And so, yeah, definitely recognizing which state are we in and is it within that like self-aligned perspective, or is it parts kind of taking over and protectors taking over and saying like, no, we don't want to deal with this, so we're going to completely detach from it kind of thing. Definitely, yeah. What else?
So
What else did we talk
we have
about?
2 skills we're going to go over today, and then we will wrap up learn. So yeah, that's the agenda. Let's hit
Yeah,
it. All right.
super
So the
excited.
first big skill we're going to go over, the fancy term, the non-English term is feedback decoding. I'm going to use the concept of Rosetta Stone
Oh, okay.
as opposed to the suggested title was reading secret notes, but I don't like it. I like the idea of Rosetta Stone. Learning how to it's interesting, like I know very little about language decoding. I know very little about how anything works when it comes to translation. I used to speak a second language. I now pretend to speak 2 languages. And let's be
Nice
honest,
little thing on your resume. I can speak these two when in fact,
I can
maybe.
barely speak English half the time anymore. My thoughts don't seem to be at all congruent. They don't flow like they used to. The Rosetta Stone is the thing that happened so that we could understand ancient Egyptian. And we were able to figure out a few words from the Rosetta Stone, and we used that to unlock the entire ancient Egyptian language. And that's kind of what I like about the idea of what we're talking about here is we don't have to have every fact, but if we just start understanding some of the facts, we can then trace facts back. An example it uses is weather reporting. First off, everyone should know that when you watch the news at night, if you watch the news anymore at night, a lot of people don't anymore. I have not watched the weather report on the news forever. But if you have a weather app or anything like that, it'll give you the information that is the best guess for what is happening, what should happen that day, what should happen over the next 10 days, or whatever. And the temperatures, and they've gotten a lot more accurate than they used to be. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, like they'd throw things up on the board and just hope they were right because they were, back in the 80s, the computer databases were not that good, the models were not that good, and so they were just taking, hey, here's the information we can gather. And this is another example of like the Rosetta Stone. Because they got a little bit of information, they were able to gather some information. But now we have more information, and we've even got more complete Rosetta Stones that we found throughout the world, and we've been able to decode lots of languages. So if you look at that in relation to like how they predict the weather, yeah, the models are way better. The databases are way better. What they're pulling from is way better. We've got more satellites in the air. However, none of that verifies what the weather is until you actually go outside.
So you're in that moment.
until you actually go to the weather. So if they're showing you a picture of a weather station that's reporting this, then you're getting actual factual information. Up until that point, you're only getting the information that is a best guess. How often are we making our assumptions, our life decisions off of a little bit of information, and then we feel like it should be this way? And that's so different than we actually walk outside and realize, oh, it is raining. Rain is actually coming down. And then there's the step afterwards. Um, I had an interesting interaction, or I was told an interesting interaction this week from some clients where they were having a great discussion about something really benign. And it was all jovial, and they were getting intense in this debate back and forth. And it wasn't even anything important. It was very, very, someone remembered something, two other people remembered something else, and they didn't agree, but they were just joking about it. And then they found out the information. And then because of past events, because the person who got it right, another person was not able to manage that information and just went crazy and just got into a fight. And all three of them led into an argument, not because the facts weren't there, because they couldn't handle the information and they couldn't handle being wrong. That piece of us keeps us away from reality. And then all of the conversations after that were tainted because you no longer are talking about and having a good conversation. You're not actually engaging in life. You're stuck in your world. So think about then if you go out and it is raining, and then that turns into, oh, well, that means today's going to be awful.
Mhm.
As opposed to, I have information. That information means this. I now need to figure out all the things that come up for me because of that interpretation. It's just so interesting the way that we process information and the way that our protectors inside of us really want us to not be hurt. And so
Mhm.
whatever the thing that comes up, whether it's that we're wrong, whether that we're having fun 1 minute and then something happens and we're not able to have fun anymore, and then we're stuck and all curiosity goes out the window. In fact, I even had this the other day with my wife Rochelle. We were having an argument. I think I even mentioned it in a couple episodes back. We were having an argument. She had asked me to do some things based on the time that she asked me. I had 2 hours before she got home. I ended up not getting home in that time frame that I thought I was going to. And then I got home and I'd been home for about 20 minutes. I started working on the things, and the joke of we have to clean the house before the cleaner comes is always fun. So
Yeah.
I was in the process of cleaning the house, but when she came in, I was sitting down on my bed doing a phone call. I had stopped doing some things, and she got overwhelmed from the fact that things weren't done. And so in her head, oh, he let me down. I'm now going to have to do everything. And we couldn't have an honest conversation about it. And I asked her a couple of times, are you actually going to hear me, or are you just going to assume that I didn't do anything? And at the moment she couldn't. And then she said something, and she said, and now I have to clean the house. And because we had already been arguing, I had already put a filter up and I couldn't hear what she was saying. What I interpreted was she told me that she now can't count on me. There's a whole bunch of things that were said in the I have to clean. She can't count on me. Clearly, I'm just useless and all of these things. And and then I went into the other room because I was pretty upset at that, and I expressed my upset at that. I texted her the next day and said, "Hey, when you said now I have to clean, were you talking about me, or were you talking about the fact that you were overwhelmed with that you felt like you weren't going to be able, you had to do it yourself?" She's like, "Well, I was under the impression that now I had to do it myself because you were going to check out." And I said, "Well, that makes more sense." So I apologized for misinterpreting, and I allowed the facts to come back in. And that's the difference, right? We can screw up we can get the translation wrong. The Rosetta Stone only gives us so much information. And then if we find out we screw up later, can we adjust? And because of that, we were able to have a good conversation. She was able to express her frustration. I was able to explain the situation. She apologized for not understanding and not being in a place where she could hear me, and it made things work.
Yeah. My thought as you're explaining that and talking about this, like, these things happen. Once again, here's my catchphrase. This is so hard. Just because these things can happen so fast. Like,
Mhm.
if you think about how you feel when you're overwhelmed, it feels like everything is moving at like 90,000 miles per minute, and it's just all going so fast. And so all those thoughts, all those feelings, all those sensations, they're just coming at you like pounding. And so in that moment, like, yeah, it's hard as hell to, like, actually take that step back and allow more information to come in because 'cause you're already being bombarded with
Mhm.
information coming in. And so I
So
love that you
then
talk about,
decoding is the key.
yeah, I love how you talk about then taking, like, the next day is when you guys were able to use that to decode and to, like, find out what the facts were, what was actually happening versus both of your interpretations of it.
Yeah, and the other example that it suggested we go back to was the jail example where I went to teach, and it was supposed to be a spiritual lesson, and I thought, well, the wise teacher needs to show up and give these, and if they just listen to me, they could get out of jail and start working on their lives, as opposed to not respecting the state they were coming into the room with. And so when the guy, and I told Victoria, I laughed about this reel because this was the clip that she pulled. And the guy shouts in the back of the room, I came here to learn about Jesus, not to fix my life, which you could go so many different ways. Like there's the narcissistic teacher that says, well, it's your loss that you're not taking in the wisdom that I came to provide you. You could go with the I'm a bad teacher. Oh, I'm not even giving the concept so that he clearly understands I'm trying to give him some love. And so clearly I'm bad at what I'm doing. I could say, oh, what a jerk, and just put all the blame back on him and say, he just isn't open minded and isn't feeling or, taking in what I'm giving him, which of course has the essence of the narcissistic teacher. In reality, the state they were coming into, the situation they were coming into, the energy they came in with was to hear some nice words. And if I step back enough, I don't have to let the voices in my head that are trying to tell me these are all the things that are not working be the facts. I can let the facts be what they were. They came for this. It wasn't meeting their satisfaction. I didn't make adjustments the way I could have on the fly, and it was a missed opportunity. The problem was, and this is where I was stuck, and this is what kind of gets in the way of people. I had taught the Wesson. I had taught the lesson to the female population before, and they loved it. And they connected with whatever the way I was integrating the spiritual and the psychological. And they had we had some good discussion and they asked some questions. And so I used that as confirmation bias
Mhm.
when the guys were having a problem. Well, the women heard it. What's wrong with you? So we go and find, like, if we get stuck, and this happens in science research all the time. If someone is not actually putting their biases off to the side in science research, they won't hear the facts that are coming out of the research. They'll go back and find the facts that validate what they want to see. And in this case, I wanted to see that I was a good teacher and I wanted to know that I made a good lesson and that this guy was just a bonehead,
Mhm.
as opposed to being gracious and recognizing it's not what he came here for.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that decoding piece, super important because
definitely.
decoding is where you have to put the bias off to the side.
Yeah. Well, and I think even just like an everyday experience, we talk about this all the time in our groups, but like those nonverbal cues, right? And then feeding into that confirmation bias idea, if we so I'm just thinking like personal experiences. I hate going to the store. I hate it so much. I get so panicked and so it's a thing.
I heard a comedian's take on going to the store. That was really awesome. It was like, I don't know how parents thought going to the store was ever going to make me a good cook, because I walk into the store and the damn tacos are deconstructed and they're everywhere. And I don't know where to find everything. And it doesn't ever come out the way that it's supposed to look like. So I end up at Taco Bell.
That's great. I love that. Um, but so yeah, so like for me, like when I think about having to go to the store or when I think about having to go somewhere that isn't in my normal routine, I get this sense of panic, right? And I get the sense of people are watching me, people are judging me, just like all the social anxiety things, right? And so then going into the store, if somebody looks at me, well, then yeah, of course I'm going to say, oh my God, like they're saying something, they're thinking something about me. And so it feeds into this whole idea of like, oh, well, we're right because of what we are seeing, even though dude could have just been looking at somebody behind me kind of like thing, right? And we don't have all the facts, nor did we take the opportunity to do that decoding. And not that I'm saying to go up to a stranger in the store and say, are you judging me right now? No. That's I mean, you can. All power to you if you can do that. I
If you
could
can do
never.
it level headed,
Yes.
and can you
Um,
hear the answer of when they say, yeah, 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 I am judging you. What
right.
about
Yeah.
it?
Right. Now, I am
Oh,
now.
and
And
especially
yeah.
now,
But no,
slightly before, over the top now.
I think this happens so often. And again, like just going back to those nonverbal cues, when someone isn't giving us the body presence, so like the eye contact or looking at us or like whatever, when people aren't meeting the expectations that we unconsciously, consciously set, like then it just feeds into that idea of us not being in that observation piece, right? And not being in that learning stage of that's actually what reality is versus my interpretation of reality right now.
That's a great segue into your segment.
Yeah. So the next skill, the name that it suggests is changing the lens, which is funny. We talked about we don't really like this because in this learning pillar, we're not changing anything. We're just here. So maybe observing the lens, or seeing the lens, but
Or
it's about
choosing the
cognitive.
non-broken one, maybe that.
Well, yes, but we also have to get to that point where we recognize that there is a broken one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what we're doing is basically just we're figuring out again that entire concept of this is my interpretation, this is what I'm feeling versus what's actually happening and what reality actually is. And it's just looking at like those myths, right? So like with Milt's story, all of your experiences that you've had in the past that fed into like that core belief of, well, if she says this or she's thinking this, then I'm not good enough or I'm useless or all the things, right? And recognizing those are all of our myths coming up. Those are all of our parts again trying to get so that we're not hurt, that we don't get hurt or that we don't feel unvalued. Is that the word?
Sure. Invalidated.
Inva- invalidated. That we're not enough.
My
Um
word conjugation is rubbing off on you.
yeah, it has for a long time. I've been here a minute, Milt. It always happens. So yes, like that is what this skill is talking about is taking us that step back to allow us to recognize when those again kind of expectations or just those core beliefs that we might have about ourselves unconsciously or not are coming out. So I think like I can use this example because I'm in the dating scene a little bit. I have like a toe in and it's just too
Hold
much.
on, I'm about to get some tea. I'm
Yeah.
so excited.
Oh, well, this is just like very
I'm all
basic
ears.
information. Um, no, so I was in a
I
very
even used
long
the young kids term right, didn't I?
all years. Yes, give me the tea. Spill the tea. You can also say chisme. That's a Spanish word, and it's just the tea, the drama. The
Alright.
kids at the elementary school called me a chismosa because I wanted to know all the tea, all the drama. Anyways, We digress. So I was in a very long-term relationship, and coming back out into the dating realm is honestly, it can be a little like just triggering, activating for those core beliefs of I'm not enough, I'm too much, I like all of those things. And it then is reinforced by flings, situationships, whatever, not working. Right. And so then rather than taking that step back and recognizing, okay, well, no, like here's X, Y, and Z of why this situationship, whatever, didn't follow through versus like, no, like I'm the problem. And I think, I don't know, I think that's an example that people, well, maybe not all people, but some people, maybe my people can relate to.
I've talked with lots of people in the dating pool, and they're very much like, first off, the dating pool sucks.
It sucks.
Dating is just a horrible state to be in. Let's just call it what it is. Especially, like, I don't know if you're like looking for your partner, or you're looking for your significant other, or you're just looking for someone to be with that doesn't have a label. But I've got a lot of clients who are looking at, like, after they're divorced, what do they want to do with that, and how do they, do they want to get remarried, and do they want to do anything? And like, in the dating world, especially when you're in a religious community, it's not just dating. It's like, are you my next partner? Are you my next spouse? And so
Yeah.
there's this weight that goes into it, as opposed to like, no, I just wanted to hang out and have a, fun with some people, and go back to my own space and be in my own space for a little while and try to figure out what all of that means. Right. So I told a client yesterday, I have no desire to ever go back to the dating pool. I will work out whatever I need to. I will apologize for whatever I need to, because I nothing in me screams dating looks like fun.
It's not fun out here. But I think even just feeding into that, then like so we've got the core beliefs, the internal myths, again, whether they're conscious or not, that come into play. And then the pressure, like the pressure from those external factors of, you know, being what others want us to be. And we kind of hit on that last episode, right? Of like that shame and the guilt of like, well, I have this part of me that is very, independent, and like I want to be able to do things myself. I can do things myself. Like I'm honestly fine by myself, and I'm have no issue with that. And then there's the other part that's like, well, I do want a person. I do want connection. I like that is a value of mine, is connection, and like the battle of that, and then adding in all of the outside voices and all those things. It's just there's so much. And so taking that step back and using this pillar to help take that step back and to see all the different moving parts and factors and vulnerabilities that are playing into this, to then move into another pillar of like working on just one, right? Or like focusing on just one, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I love that. And then the way that, I guess maybe we should, not reject things right off the bat, but maybe the reframe that they're trying to ask for, or, well, I know what the reframe they're asking for is now, is it's not that they're trying to reframe the idea and not accept, it's that we're trying to put it into more realistic terms. Dating sucks. I struggle. I have some things that are going into it that are causing me to find it harder. When I walk outside and it's raining, I don't like it. As opposed to, this now ruins my day. I'm not a bad teacher, and I missed an opportunity to connect with someone because I wasn't providing what they wanted to hear. All of those things are, when they say reframe, we're not avoiding the realities. We're softening the interpretation, heading more towards a neutral description, so that we can look over things and actually figure out what changes need to happen. I don't know that we've talked about the teeter-totter of change and acceptance.
We haven't hit on that, no.
So one of the big concepts that we've taught for years is the idea that change and acceptance have to be in this balance. If anyone's a 12-stepper, they know that they do the serenity prayer at the end of God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That wisdom is the piece where learn really starts to come in. It's not that we don't need to change some things, and it's not that we don't need to accept some things. It's, are we applying the right energy with the actual facts, not with what we feel. So if I run too much over into acceptance, I get depression and stuckness. If I run too much over into change, then I'm running towards anxiety, because change is trying to fix the future. Over acceptance or over review of the past is deep depression. All the woulda, shoulda, couldas that I could have had, as opposed to the past has happened. The future is not real. So anything I change, if I change it in the present, means that whatever future, if there is this sacred timeline that we all are running on, that we're all heading towards, infinite abyss. I don't know. I have to be able to believe in this moment that I haven't written anything for the future yet. And I get that the past is going to heavily influence, but if I live in that middle and find the balance of when to apply the right energy of acceptance and change, when is it wise to turn around and see, okay, what things are happening right now and what things have influenced that from the past? And how am I not over predicting the future? I have to put down the lens of the future. It doesn't exist. I have to accept that the past is there, but I don't have to accept that the past is happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I may feel like what I'm going through is the present, it's not what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And that's where the goal, if we're looking for a goal of learn, it's to become more of a perpetual watchtower. So we use the analogy of the smoke detector and the watchtower. I talked about the day that my daughter was about to run into traffic. In fact, we literally passed that memory on Facebook like 2 days ago. And my wife was just sitting in bed casually and like, oh, yeah, this is the night that Anya nearly died.
And our daughter was almost taken from us.
Oh,
It's fine.
in that moment, the smoke detector worked.
Mm-hmm.
If I then functioned for the rest of my daughter's life, that anytime it looked like she was about to run, I needed this smoke detector and cut her off, that would be over analyzing the change. That would be over applying the change energy. Whereas, luckily my instincts were good enough in that moment that I could just be, I needed to be responsive in that moment. I needed to be willing to jump in and stop her from a potential disaster. And most of the other times in life, I can be the watchtower. The watchtower just lets you see what's going on and gives you a chance to actually assess what's going on. I go to medieval things all the time. So I think watchtower and I think knights in a tower. If you're a soldier, I'm sure it's the guard tower that you erected or up in the tree or whatever. My head goes to medieval stuff. That's where it goes. So I see the soldiers, and like if they start seeing the enemy flag, how that then creates that alarm. Because if they're an enemy, there's a history there, as opposed to just a random stranger that we don't know. Maintaining that curiosity, though, is the key. If we have no curiosity, we are not going to be able to learn. We're not going to be able to understand that everything that's coming up is information, that the lenses that we're looking through were lenses that were developed over time because we got hurt in some way. And being able to take off the glasses and actually see what's going on and make the assessment to change after the fact is effective. There are very few times where the smoke alarm is going off at 2 a.m. in my life. It's most of the time when the smoke alarm goes off, I actually could take time to assess and figure out, oh, it's just the stupid bacon that I'm cooking. Because even though I feel like that person who's looking at me and yelling at me and has what looks like ill intent towards me, I don't actually have to say it's 2 a.m. I have to run or I have to fight or I have to do flee or whatever. I can actually say, this person may actually have ill intent towards me. Can I leave? Can I get away? All of those things.
Yeah.
Do I have to engage? Do I actually have to open my trap?
Does Milton actually have to talk right now?
That's been a hard one. So that's where I really, as we kind of wrap this up, I really love that we're messing with the word learn, and yet we're not. The image that came to my head is the eager student coming into a new class, excited to learn from a professor. And I'm thinking in college terms. You're in grad school and you're excited to take in this knowledge that you don't know. There's so many things we don't know. And so if learning is done in that way about us, and we treat us as an unknown, which is kind of a crazy thought, and we're just curious about everything that comes up, how does that change the way we interact with the world? How does that make it so that, oh, I'm just a student and I don't have all the answers, and I'm just trying the information that I'm learning from the professor, even though the professor happens to be earlier versions of me, doesn't mean that professor's wrong. However, it doesn't mean that professor's right either. I got to go test it. I got to go look. I got to go work. And I maintain that eager student that's just taking notes as opposed to the active engagement. There's such a cool thing about being that student that comes in with a clean slate and accepts that they don't know things and how much more they take in.
I love that. I really like that image of like self is that student and self is taking the notes and listening, like just hearing what all of the different classes, different professors have to say. And it's just absorbing that
Yeah.
for what it is rather than what those parts of us say it is, right? Like, no, this is the truth. Like, this is your truth and you can have that and that there's nothing wrong with that. And how can we make that?
And understanding the limits of truth, like being okay to say it's my current truth
Yeah.
as opposed to it's my truth.
Yes.
Because again, the moment we close off, and
Curiosity
that,
goes out the door.
yeah, and I am all for people saying this is the truth I have up to now. I'm not for someone telling me this is the only truth that could ever exist because this is my truth.
Yeah.
I mean, if that was the case, then we go back to flat earth. We go back to, women are witches. We go back to crazy things. If a man ever has an idea that, the star is not God winking at us, it's actually another planet, then we burn them at the stake, right? Like, I don't want that. I
Yeah.
want continued learning. I want continued growth. And I want truth to mean what it does. I want it to mean the limits of what it is. I know this much now.
Yeah. Ah, love. I think that's a
Good
solid place
stopping
to get
place.
into. Yeah, so next week we are getting into the healing pillar, which I
Yeah.
will be super honest, I haven't looked at the manual yet as far as like what it all contains. So,
In fairness, she only got it on like Tuesday.
yeah,
It's 242
it was
pages
so
long.
good. But it's so exciting. That's so
Yes.
exciting. So yeah, I think so now taking just quick overview of this learning stage of this learning pillar is open, curiosity, and allowing facts to come in and accepting facts for what they are while also figuring out how we can self-aligned make change while we're self-aligned,
Yeah.
right?
Don't just make change because the emotions are driving it. Make change because it's
Yeah.
wise.
Yes.
Yep.
100%. And what our little thing says is I'm just going to read it verbatim because I think it's interesting. We are ready to move to the next phase because we know where the real emotional hurt is located, not just where we assumed it was. So that's exciting. So kind of like So interesting. I feel like we repeat ourselves a lot, but it's because it all connects. And again, that's where it becomes so freaking hard because it's all connected. But yeah, we're taking that we know what's happening right now. We know what is actually going on, and now we can move forward in this healing pillar and get into it. Love it. Takeaways.
My rock on. You only see that if you're on the YouTube. That's about the worst rock on ever. It was awesome. It was great. Ditto to everything she says. All right, Victoria. Excellent. I love it. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. We'll see you next
Thanks,
week.
guys.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Rewrite Your Story. Take a moment to notice what story showed up for you today.
Remember, you're not your story. You're the one holding the pen.
And each moment is a chance to write a new chapter.
Be sure to join us next time as we keep exploring the path towards self-alignment.
We'll see you then.